Hello everybody. Next up we play host to AFC Bournemouth at the Olympic Stadium. It's a Saturday 3pm kickoff, which is right and proper for the order of the universe. There are a couple of spots of engineering work to note this week. If you come in from Colchester and points east thereof, there will be no direct service into Stratford or Liverpool Street on Saturday. Instead, a rail replacement bus service will whisk you between Colchester and Billericay, where you'll be greeted by the usual service between London and Southend Victoria. Also, there's no DLR service at the highly useful, if you can stomach sharing a train with the sort of person who thinks ABBA were any good, Pudding Mill Lane station. No replacement buses or anything, just find an alternative route is the instruction. Thanks a bunch, TfL. So, Bournemouth then. Well, driving back home from one's visit to see the parental unit at the weekend, the commentators on the wireless seemed unable to go for more than 30 seconds without mentioning what a great season the Cherries were having, largely because they'd reached the FA Cup quarter-finals for the first time since they'd started broadcasting them in colour or something. All of that may just have been deflecting from the fact that Bournemouth's form in the league has been rather indifferent of late. Since the beginning of February, they've played 7 times, losing 5, drawing 1 and winning 1. And since the win came against Southampton, it probably shouldn't count anyway. The draw came at Tottenham, whilst the defeats came at home to Liverpool, Wolves, Brentford and, intriguingly the other night, Ipswich, whilst they also went down away at Brighton. So, whilst there had been mutterings, and a little bit of talk earlier on in the season, of Europe, that talk has been a bit muted of late, though much will of course depend on how far down the table European qualification goes this season, once they get the abacus out to calculate the coefficient. At present they sit in 10th place with 44 points from the 30 played so far. This is 6 points off the 5th spot, occupied by Chelsea, who are actually in play at the time of writing, so this would probably have changed by the time you read it. Bournemouth are one of the few teams to do much in the way of business during the winter window, much to the dismay of Daisy, who had to do some player research for the second week running. At 18 years old, Matai Akinboni is probably being looked at as one for the future. The US under-19 central defender fetched a nice round £1 million fee on his transfer from the inelegantly named DC United. Given the state of play over there at the moment, he'd probably have paid £1 million just to escape the country. He's yet to make an appearance for Bournemouth's first 11. They paid a bit more for Argentinian left-back stroke wing-back Julio Soler, no relation. The initial fee paid to Lanús, that's what it says here, was £6.6 million, but that could rise to £11 million plus if add-ons get activated. Although Paraguayan-born, he moved to Argentina at a young age and has represented his adopted country at under-20 and under-23 level. Both of Soler's Bournemouth appearances have come in the Cup. We won't be signing what was their final signing of the window. Eli Junior Krupi was bought for £10 million from Lorient, which, as we all know, is French for Leighton. Bournemouth immediately loaned the player back to Les Eaux for the rest of the season. In what must have been a slow news day for The Guardian, they named him as one of the best players born in the world in 2006. On a Thursday, probably. And with that, we shall move on to the wild and wacky world of association football. And it was a case of they all lived happily ever after, out in Bulgaria, as top-flight side Arda Kardzili welcomed former player Petko Ganchev as their special guest for their match against Cherno Moor. Nothing remarkable about that, you might think. Well, other than the fact that the invite came a mere 2 weeks after the club had held a minute's silence to mark the player's passing. Ganchev commented that he was so shocked to hear that he was dead, he poured himself a brandy. The club commented that the error had occurred due to them being in receipt of wrong information for their error. Yes, really. Meanwhile, Spurs immediately put in a bid for the 78-year-old on the grounds that he's probably a free agent, a prospect that would have Ganchev reaching for the rest of that bottle of brandy. Meanwhile, across the pond, Donald Trump has announced the creation of a White House World Cup task force, which will be charged with ensuring that next year's tournament runs smoothly. Yes, really. So look out for a player being clean through on goal against the hosts, being taken out by immigration officers and deported just as they'd reached the edge of the box, as denial of goal scoring opportunity becomes official US government policy. Also look out for the home side getting knocked out in the group stages, but the tournament being delayed for months as the results go through the court system because the other countries stole the tournament. Enough of this biting political satire, and let's move on to us. Well, that was a bit of a dog's dinner, wasn't it, on Tuesday? We set out with what was best described as an experimental starting lineup, giving rare starts to Guillaume and Ferguson. Ferguson's lack of form manifested itself in another scuffed miss that, although the pass was slightly behind where he might have wanted it, he would still have adapted enough to have put away before his injury layoff. Clearly that long injury absence has done him few favours. At half-time, the experiment having been deemed a failure by Mr. Potter, a triple change saw us with a more familiar shape, and it showed. Fulkrug missed one that he should have scored and hit the bar with another. Worst of all was the usual reliable Souček missing from close range. Fulkrug was handily placed in the centre, which got me musing as to the motive behind Souček's decision not to square the ball. Of course, no game is complete without PGMOL's finest electing to rewrite the laws of the game for their own convenience. This time we found out that a good solid kick in the head no longer constitutes an offence for which a free kick will be given. You'd think they'd announce these things, wouldn't you? So the game was sadly symptomatic of where the whole season has gone. Two teams safe from relegation with no danger much else happening. From our point of view, it was clear that Mr. Potter has a number of players in his inherited squad that he wanted to have a look at in the starting lineup, rather than from the perspective of 20 minutes at the end of the game. I think it's fair to say that by the time this fixture occurs next season, our squad will look a lot different as the manager develops a squad that he wants to work with. On the injury front, Antonio and Somerville are still the two long-term absentees. They may be joined by Kudos, whose hip knock the day before the Wolves game was poorly timed. Such was the extent to which Tuesday's game was crying out for someone to run powerfully at a Wolves defence, singularly ill-equipped to deal with such matters. His hip problem is improving, so there's a chance that he will be available. Todibo was under the weather with an unspecified illness on Tuesday, but seems to be recovering well, whilst Emerson should also be clear after a knock picked up at Molineux. And so to the predictions then. Well, I think Mr. Potter may have discovered enough about some of his fringe players to revert to a less experimental lineup, injuries permitting. Bournemouth are out of form, and presuming we put a league side out rather than Tuesday's League Cup style starting 11, I think we'll get back to our winning ways. So the £2.50 I was going to put towards augmenting Canvey Island's defences, in case Trump decides to annex the place, will instead be placed on a home win. Make it 2-1 to us, please, Mr. Winston. Enjoy the game.